In this video, we will see how the World Economic Forum through its CEO Klaus Schwab are connected to the Vatican. We will see how the WEF executes the Pope's encyclicals Laudato Si from 2015 and Fratelli Tutti from 2020. But first we will listen to what the Catholic priest, Philip Larry, has to say about the World Economic Forum and how Klaus Schwab are trying to get the message from Francis through in the Davos meetings.
And I'm here today with Father Philip Larry, who holds the chair in logic and epistemology at the Pontifical Lateran University. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Michael. The World Economic Forum is a very unique event where you have a lot of powerful, rich, and influential people. They get together and talk and discuss different issues, and every year, like you said, there's a different theme. Klaus Schwab, who is the founder and the actual president of the World Economic Forum, is convinced that the forum can be used in order to promote good, the good in society, shall we say, and the common good. Like I think Pope Francis mentions in his greeting, sometimes self-interest prevails. Every year he sends a message to the World Economic Forum, which is usually read by Cardinal Peter Turkson, trying to motivate the leaders at the World Economic Forum to think about the good in society and especially about the common good so that everybody can benefit as a whole. Right. So he talks about the common good. He talks about what I'm beginning to look at this as Pope Francis capitalism 2.0. But is there a way that we could make capitalism benefit more people at a greater level? So I think that's what Pope Francis is trying to suggest. Yeah. Was his message accepted and assimilated by everyone? No. There's some people that could care less what Pope Francis says. But again, Klaus Schwab is not one of those. He's very sensitive towards Catholic values, and he is often in the Vatican. He comes to Rome, and I think he's trying to allow the message of the Holy Father to get through to people at an event like Davos. Yeah.
According to the book, A Partner in Shaping History, 1971 to 2020, published by the World Economic Forum, WEF, reveals that Catholic priests has participated in the forum in Davos since the 1970s, and shows the World Economic Forum's connection with the Vatican. We read on page 29 to 30. At the 1974 European Management Symposium, Dom Helder Câmara, the Roman Catholic Archbishop of Olinda and Recife, Brazil, made a notable appearance, bolstering the forum's role as a platform for provocative yet vital voices. Câmara had been invited to Davos despite the fact that he was considered persona non grata by many governments and business leaders. He had dubbed himself the spokesperson of those two-thirds of humanity who suffer from the unfair distribution of nature's resources. In his address, Dom Helder predicted that developing countries could someday challenge and clash with the leading economic powers. Let's hope by the Almighty God that this confrontation will not force them into using arms. He criticized multinationals for keeping so much of mankind in appalling conditions. He called for a higher social responsibility, fairer wealth distribution, and a reassessment of the false values of a waste society to achieve prosperity for all people. After having provided a platform for the Club of Rome report The Limits to Growth, which attracted a great deal of publicity for the 1973 meeting, the forum intensified its emphasis on environmental issues, inviting Captain Jacques-Yves Cousteau, the renowned French naval officer and undersea explorer, to Davos. The Catacombs Pact. Archbishop Dom Helder Câmara led a group of 40 bishops in a secret meeting at night, on November 16, 1965 in the Catacombs of Domitilla, outside Rome on the Via Appia Antica. The catacombs, spread over 17 kilometers underground, served as the location for the signing of a secret document, titled the Pact of the Catacombs, which included 13 points. But it was never sanctioned by the Vatican, until the Jesuit Pope, Francis, was inaugurated on the 13th of March, 2013. Jorge Mario Bergoglio was appointed as the 266th Pope of the Roman Catholic Church and took the name Francis, inspired by Saint Francis of Assisi from Italy. Unlike his predecessors, Pope Francis is not of Italian origin. Interestingly, his appointment as Pope coincided with the signing of the secret Pact of the Catacombs.
92-year-old Father Luigi Battazzi is the last known survivor of a secret pact that experts say may have influenced Pope Francis. Signed 50 years ago at the time of Vatican II by Catholic bishops in this underground church in Rome. Called the Pact of the Catacombs, it vowed to create a poor church for the poor, the same church Pope Francis says he wants today.
I always say that Pope Francis is the new Catacombs Pact.
I give you one example which for me was probably a crucial moment in my life. I traveled for the first time to Brazil. I met a priest who was known at that time as the priest of the poor people. His name was Don Elder Camara. And he brought me to the favelas of Recife, and I was so shocked. And I said, I have to invite this bishop to Davos to tell the people what poverty is. So I invited him to the annual meeting in Davos. But then when I came back in Switzerland, I found out that actually he was forbidden at that time to speak in Switzerland because he was considered to be a communist. And I said, this is for me a test. But then I noticed that many companies told me, if you invite this person who is so much against business, we will not come to Davos anymore. And that's where I had to stand to my values, even at the risk that I would have to give up the World Economic Forum.
Wow.
But it went very well. I have to say, the audience in Davos listened to him.
So, it's clear how the Archbishop Don Helder Camara had influence over the Davos meetings since the 70s. Now, let's get back to the Catacombs Pact.
Now, this pact had 13 points, and in it, these bishops vowed to avoid wealth or the appearance of wealth, including in what they wore, not wearing rich vestments or loud colors, avoiding gold and silver. They also said they wouldn't accept invitations to extravagant dinners. Now, they also vowed to put pressure on international organizations to help change the economic structures which they said exploit the poor. These are all points that are remarkably similar to Pope Francis's agenda for the Church today.
Let's take a look at the 10th point of the 13 of the Catacombs Pact that Pope Francis signed in 2013. We will do our utmost so that those responsible for our government and for our public services make and put into practice laws, structures and social institutions required by justice and charity, equality and the harmonic and holistic development of all men and women, and by this means bring about the advent of another social order, worthy of the sons and daughters of mankind and of God. Let's compare a quote from the Pope's encyclical Fratelli Tutti, which he wrote in 2020, with a quote from Klaus Schwab's book, COVID-19 The Great Reset, which he also wrote in 2020. Pope Francis's encyclical Fratelli Tutti. Business abilities, which are a gift from God, should always be clearly directed to the development of others and to the elimination of poverty. The right to private property is always accompanied by the primary and prior principle of the subordination of all private property to the universal destination of the earth's goods, and thus the right of all to their use. This is remarkably similar to what Schwab of the WEF writes in his 2020 book, The Great Reset, where he states, "First and foremost, the post-pandemic era will usher in a period of massive wealth redistribution, from the rich to the poor and from capital to labor." On the World Economic Forum's website we find a page that says, here's the Pope's prescription for resetting the global economy in response to COVID-19. We can also see it as talking about the common good, which is mentioned around 30 times in the Pope's encyclical Laudato Si from 2015. The Laudato Si Encyclical is all about climate change, global warming, and calling for a one-world government to quote-unquote, combat the calamities. Let's welcome Greta Thunberg, who is also a Jesuit puppet, promoting the Pope's Laudato Si encyclical about climate change.
Hi, my name is Greta Thunberg. I'm a climate activist, and I just met with Pope Francis.
God bless you. Continue to walk, okay? Continue, okay?
And he was very kind, and he he told us that we should continue like we do now, and he supports the school strike, the big school strike that is happening on May 24th, which also happened to be on the anniversary of Laudato Si. And so I urge you to join the climate strike.
Klaus Schwab also talks a lot about transhumanism and artificial intelligence, but for the sake of the length of this video, I will recommend to check out the event called Humanity 2.0, which was held in the Vatican in 2019. There are many videos to be found from it online, and it seems it is just another part of the Jesuit plan, which Klaus Schwab executes like the climate change hoax. Lastly, we will see how Joe Biden praises the Pope, calling him the single most popular figure in the world today, and how important his encyclical Laudato Si is.
Mr. Vice President, thank you very much for being with us today.
I'm flattered to be invited, Father.
Appreciate
Thank you.
Now, a mere 50 years ago, we had a debate in this country about whether a Catholic could actually be elected president, should be elected president. We established diplomatic relations between the U.S. and the Vatican only in the 1980s. And now this Jesuit Pope is coming to address a joint session of Congress. What does that say about our country?
Look, Father, the thing I love about this Pope, I got to meet him when I went to his, quote, inauguration. I always thought it was an installation, but the inauguration. And he said, "Oh, Mr. Vice President," he said, you know, "Holy Father." And the Pope reached out like this and he grabbed my hand. He said, "I know, Mr. Vice President, you're always welcome here." That is the message he's sending to the world.
And that is the tone he's striking everywhere, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's why he's the single most popular figure in the world today. And not just in Catholic nations, across the board. Look at the encyclical on climate change. It's all about, you know, we have responsibilities. We have to husband this planet. I mean, and I'm excited, quite frankly, as a practicing Catholic. I am really excited by the whole world is getting to see what are the basic essential elements of what constitutes Catholicism.
Right.
I think it's a total misrepresentation of the Pope's encyclical to say it's a political document. It's a human document.